in Iran. Let's bring in retired four-star general, Fox News senior strategic analyst, chairman of the Institute of War, General Jack Keane. General, what kind of progress are we making now 21 days in?
Yeah, well, it's very significant. You heard it from the president yesterday, also from a chairman and the Secretary of War, and Admiral Cooper, who's the CENTCOM commander. They're all on the same page. We're on plan and making significant progress here and stripping away what our mission is, all the offensive capability that Iran has, and we're well into that, certainly. And in dealing with that, we're making certain that the Straits of Hormuz also is getting a focus here for all the obvious reasons. And that's why you see Apache helicopters being applied. The A-10, for our audience to understand, is a close air support aircraft that's not like the normal fighter F-16, F-15, or F-22. It's really designed to support troops on the ground. It flies at a slower pace. It's got different kinds of munitions on it as well. So that is being employed. And what is happening here is that it'll take probably 10 days, a couple of weeks to make certain that if we bring vessels through the Straits of Hormuz, we minimize the risk significantly. We likely have to put something on those ships also in terms of counter-drone capability, and there are fairly sophisticated capabilities that we can put on there as a defensive measure. And by the way, there was a misunderstanding with the Europeans. They thought we wanted them to do this immediately. I happened to have a conversation with the Secretary General, Mark Rutte, and said, no, we don't intend to send any of our ships down there until we minimize the risk. And I think that certainly opened up some discussions here. Listen, when we asked the Europeans to do something since post-World War II, even though sometimes they may not agree with us, even though sometimes they begrudgingly, what do they finally do? They come along. Why do they do that? Because the United States is an indispensable leader, and they cannot survive in NATO without the United States being a member of it. That's the facts on the ground, and we'll get their cooperation here. The other thing that's really taken place, and you were reporting on it quite adequately here, and that is taking down the organizations that support the regime. This is Israel's mission, and you're stripping down leaders in doing that, but also soldiers on the ground that are out there. The Bazid militia is being stripped away right on the streets of Iran. They're being killed day in and day out, day in and day out. What is that producing throughout these security forces and the IRGC that's the glue that holds this regime together? What it's being defined as chaotic decision-making and paranoia running through the ranks of these organizations. And that is good news. Doesn't mean they're going to collapse tomorrow, but what it does mean is they're not the same organization they used to be. And the Israelis are going to continue to pound this organization and strip it away. This is what keeps the regime in power. And weaken that to a point where, one, people inside Iran that are close to this regime and maybe even a part of it want to change the leadership and make a deal with the United States. That certainly is an option. Certainly break it so much that it's vulnerable to the protest movement itself. That's a more remote option, but it's out there as well. The facts are, though, this regime is being stripped away from its weapons and also its organization to sustain itself. And what we got to do is stick right with what we're doing. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. War is fundamentally a test of wills here. And the will of the regime, they want to survive and recover and rebuild. And we're going to break that so they can't do it, and that's fundamentally our will to do that. And all of our leadership is behind this and sticking it to the end to make sure the objectives we assigned ourselves, Brian, are actually achieved.
The Treasury Secretary said yesterday, and he said it again in the Oval Office, said it on Fox Business, too, that there's defections among the ranks. They're already finding that in Iran. Also, we're finding out, and there's been multiple people saying, including the president's son, who's his advisor, there's panic among the leaders with the targeted killings. And the one thing that would bring this war to a close, if this continues to happen, they're all hiding separately.
Yeah, and look, the regime appears strong, defiant, certainly public statements, until it's not. And usually these authoritarian regimes like that, when you start to break them, when they crumble quickly. And we'll see. We can't. we're trying to achieve that end. Certainly, that is not the goal of the United States. The goal of the United States is to make certain they can't attack in the region or attack outside of it. And that's a very achievable goal. If the byproduct of that is that this thing breaks apart and we got new leaders to work with, certainly we'll take that deal. And that's what the Israelis are trying to accomplish. Their goal is to set the conditions for a regime collapse. And they're working hard at it. Plus, the targets they took in the Caspian Sea, those were our targets. And they took those things down to help out there because we're focusing somewhat on the Straits of Hormuz, as I indicated before.
So the 12 Arab Muslim countries that have been targeted by Iran say this. The ministers reaffirmed their commitment to continued intensive consultation and coordination in regard to monitoring developments and assess emerging issues in a way that ensures formulation of common positions and adoption of necessary legitimate measures and procedures to protect their security, stability, and sovereignty, and to halt the Iranian heinous attacks on their territories. There's some internal communication that there's a fear that the attacking the Arab states will backfire. That's from inside. That's from inside Iran. Have you heard that too? And has it backfired?
Well, it has backfired. Who would have thought that those 12 nations would come together and publicly decry Iran and what it's doing? Publicly do that. Remember, many of these nations were publicly not supporting any offensive action against Iran. Privately, they were saying, yes, please, go ahead and do it. And finally, this has been very frustrating for many of us observing these countries who are allies and partners. We want them to be what they talk about privately among themselves and with us. We want public statements to that, and we're finally getting it here. And what produced that? Iran did that. Iran has united these countries to come out publicly against them, finally. And that is a huge backfire on them. And Iran made a strategic mistake. Attacking U.S. bases, we certainly knew that was coming. Attacking the civilian populations in these countries is what is producing that result there. And that was a mistake the Iranians made. They got little for that. And certainly what they wanted to do is put pressure on the United States as a result of it to stop the war. That hasn't happened. What they are saying is we're all in and supporting what the United States and Israel is doing.
The president's going to see it through. There's no doubt about it. General Jack